Good afternoon, everybody. This is Chip Landers with my Vero Beach's Real Estate YouTube channel. I hope after this is said and done that you will like, subscribe, and share it. Now, today's topic is going to be a standard contract versus an as-is contract, neither of which is what they say they are. Let's start with the seller's as-is contract. Most sellers believe that that's something that they want. They don't have to make any repairs, and they've sold the house. Unfortunately, that is not what an as-is contract any longer. A lot of this has to do with the recession and the banks selling off foreclosures back in the 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 time frame. And they did sell as is and not making any repairs. So a lot of agents got used to just doing an as-is contract. Now, though, it's kind of changed. What is an as-is contract becomes, we'll do our inspections, and then we'll decide how much we want to ask back from the seller so that we can get a credit, even though it's an as-is contract, or we'll ask for repairs and so forth. So the contract has been misused by a lot of parties. I hear agents all the time tell their buyers, well, if you change your mind, you can just cancel it, no big deal. Also, you have buyers that get cold feet. Oh, wait, every buyer gets cold feet, and they want to cancel, and they can cancel at no risk whatsoever. Oh, and I have some buyers that, well, I'll make an offer on this one, but if another one shows up that I like better, I'll just cancel the contract. So that's kind of great. If you're the buyer. If you're a buyer's agent, don't mind doing a lot of paperwork, have at it. I don't need practice doing paperwork. I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and I don't like to waste anyone's time, including my own, which is my most important asset, is my time. I don't think it's fair to sellers that buyers just cancel for any reason. Cancel, gosh forbid, for any reason. And I call it the headache clause. Back in 2010, I had a client that younger client had come into some money from a relative and had a boyfriend, soon to be fiance, who went out and were looking at homes. And then they purchased one. We did inspections. It wasn't too bad. Last day of inspections, I contacted the buyer and said, well, of course, we're moving along, correct? I've got a migraine today. I really don't feel like doing this. Just cancel the contract and we'll look at it again. And I said, are you serious? You want to cancel the contract because you have a migraine? Yes, that is what I want to do. So I had the pleasure of calling the agent and letting them know that my buyer was canceling the contract. Not really something in 2010 we all want to be dealing with. So it happens. A couple of weeks later, that same buyer called and said, well, I would like to make another offer on that home. I said, well, you had an agreed upon price. Yeah, but it's been on the market another couple of weeks. I want to offer X amount less. I said, okay, we can do that, and we'll see how it goes. So we did. And lo and behold, the seller took the offer. They'd already done inspections, but my buyer wanted to do some more inspections, which was their right per the contract. So we did some inspections. Nothing spectacular showed up as well. And while we were doing this, the buyer had a lending source that was going to provide a loan for them because they really didn't want to use all of the money on the house. And it was more than 20% down, so it shouldn't have been a big deal. Well, guess what? The last day of the financing contingency, the buyers called and said, well, we didn't get approved. And I said, well, that's interesting because I don't have anything that says you've been declined. Oh, well, our lender is doing that for us. And I said, well, not surely what happened there because there really wasn't a problem all along. And now, well, we just didn't get approved. That's all. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, oh, they just changed their mind again. So I said, I need a letter of denial from the lender. And then we have a cancellation agreement that has to be signed in order for you to get a refund. They did. We received the letter of denial that day. They brought it by and then wanted to know when they got their money back. And as I explained to them again, the money was coming back after the cancellation agreement was signed. Which the seller's agent did, thank gosh, because you know what? They had a backup offer that was for a higher amount for sales price. So it kind of worked out for them. Then the buyers, the next day came in and said, all right, well, where's our check? And I said, well, that comes from the escrow company. And they have to wait for your check to clear because it had been such a short time period. Well, it's good. I go, well, unless they know that it's good, they're not going to send you a check back. Okay. So about an hour later, we then had a phone call from them saying, we're coming over, we're showing to you that the bank has cleared our funds and it's okay. And I said, well, thank you again, but until the title company knows that the check is cleared, they're not going to write you a check back. So I digress and I apologize, but it's one of those stories that you just can't believe. And of course, they got their money back. But the bottom line is, if you're the listing agent and it's an as-is contract, it's kind of a, roll the dice and see what happens. If the other agent's very knowledgeable about it and explains to them that you are buying it at this price as is, things work out. I just don't like to have my house off the market, my client's house off the market, and then try to explain to people that it really wasn't anything wrong with the house. The buyers just changed their mind, which some people may believe and some people won't. I always find it interesting, though, when the buyer cancels as to why they won't provide us the inspection report. We didn't pay for it. I've even offered to pay for it in some cases, but the buyers just won't pass it on so that we can take care of items that may have shown up. But, that is their prerogative. They've paid for it. So now let's talk about a standard contract, which I do prefer in most cases for my clients because it's a much more solid contract. The as-is contract, by the way, has a clause in there that says the buyer may cancel for any reason. Remember the headache clause that I mentioned before? Any reason. Standard contracts that have been around a long time have a criteria that of items that are considered cosmetic items, which the seller doesn't have to fix. It's also listing the items that the seller does have to fix. And it's specific as to talking about useful life of a roof, which is more important for insurance standpoint now than a repair, but also the end of life for air conditioners that are working just fine, but the inspector will mention that it's at the end of its life, and then a buyer wants a new air conditioning unit, even though the current one is working fine. So standard contracts are where a seller is obligated to make a certain amount of repairs up to a percentage of the sales price, so a dollar limit. 3 sections. One is open permits. First one is the primary inspection, talking about is everything working fine. And then the third is for wood destroying organisms, termites to most people. And usually it's not an issue. Open permits you would have looked at ahead of time, I would hope, if you were the listing agent, taking care of that. And there was a lot of open permits from 2004 when all the roofs were being redone in our area, and the roofers who came into town from various areas outside of Florida, pulled the permit but never found out because they got paid and they went back to wherever they came from. Open permits can be an issue as well for pools. My record is going back to 1992 for an open pool permit, and they've changed the codes now so that the pool has to have a particular type of drain, and you have to have protection from little ones, any open doors or windows. There has to be a barrier for them so nothing bad happens to them if they can't swim. So, little things like that. But the seller is obligated to repair them. And the biggest item I always caution my sellers on is the fact that repairs have to be done by a licensed individual, not Bubba the brother-in-law. In a lot of cases, though, we can negotiate a dollar amount that allows the buyer to fix it themselves, unless the lender requires it ahead of time, so that they can use whoever they want to do the repair work, and they trust them more than they trust our licensed and insured electricians, plumbers, air conditioning contractors, and so forth. So, the two contracts offer a lot for each party. Obviously, if a house is in disrepair or hasn't been maintained very properly, or the seller is in a position where they're just financially they can't do a whole lot, then maybe an as-is contract fits. A standard contract, if the house is in very good condition, newer, pristine condition, sellers have done a great job of maintaining the house, then a standard contract may make more sense for them than others. The best thing that I like about a standard contract is that the buyers cannot just cancel a contract for no reason or for any reason that they desire. I mean, some buyers don't even do inspections and just decide to cancel the contract. That's not a good thing for all parties. And I know I had a transaction not too long ago where I found out after the fact, when the buyer canceled, that this was the fourth contract they had canceled. Had I known that ahead of time, I don't know that we would have put it together with the buyer, but it is what it is. So that's kind of the backwards, the forwards of why there are two different types of contracts, why we use the contracts we use, and to the benefit of a buyer or to the benefit of a seller. It depends on who you're representing. A lot of buyers want to go in and do the as-is just simply so that they can walk away if they'd like. If you represent the seller, again, the misunderstandings that a lot of sellers have is that an as-is contract is as-is, and in this day and age, it's not. It's just a free peek at the house. Buyer may stay, buyer may want to renegotiate. Seller is willing to make repairs, but the buyer goes, I don't care, I don't want the house. Or, the $500 worth of repairs becomes a request for a credit of $2,500 because the buyer paid more than they wanted to pay because there was another offer in place. So as you can see, I have my feelings, but it is up to the seller ultimately as to what they want to do and how they want to do it. Even if a buyer presents an as-is contract does not mean that the seller cannot counter with a standard contract. And then we find out how serious a buyer may be. So I hope you appreciate